Greetings, vinyl community. Today I'm going to go through the discography of the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band as a bit of a tribute to Neil Innes, who passed away at the end of 2019. And the first order of business is to determine what is a Bonzo Dog. And Bonzo was a character created by the artist George Studdy in the 1920s. And he became very popular. He was featured in cartoons, started out in various magazines as a cartoon character, and was sold as figurines and all sorts of knickknacks and collectibles, and in particular postcards. And I have a few Bonzo postcards from the 20s and thereabouts. Love's Labor Lost. This is a used postcard. It's postmarked in 1925, sent in England. I Shall Be Here for Some Time. And Bonzo postcards were sometimes slightly risque, in the tradition of the naughty British postcards that were sold at seaside resorts. And that's something that'll come up again in the Bonzo's discography. Gentlemen Prefer Sitting Out. This one actually has a message on the back. It's postmarked 1928, and it's written in pale green ink in Cyrillic script and addressed from Paris to Bulgaria. My word, black cats are lucky. I wish I could hang on here. I'd be very glad of a line from you. And my favorite, Bonzo's Hymn of Hate. And the Bonzo character does appear on the back cover of the first Bonzo Dog Doodah Band album, Gorilla. This came out in 1967. Prior to the release of their album, the Bonzo Dog Band, or Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, had been offered the opportunity to be the new vaudeville band who had the big hit Winchester Cathedral, but didn't actually exist as a band. It was just recorded by session men. So in order to go out on tour, they had to recruit a band, tried to recruit the Bonzos, so they turned it down, and went legit and made their album Gorilla. The core members of the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band were Vivian Stanshall and Neil Innes. They were the creative heart of the band, essentially the Lennon and McCartney, with Neil Innes having more of the pop sensibility of a McCartney, and Vivian Stanshall being the weird, surrealistic Dada contributor to the band. Although Neil Innes was no slouch in the weirdness department when he wanted to go that route. Both multi-instrumentalists. Everyone in the band was a multi-instrumentalist. Viv Stanshall played largely brass instruments. Neil Innes was mostly guitar and piano. Rodney Slater and Roger Ruskin Spear, mostly saxophones and other horns and woodwinds. And Legs Larry Smith on drums, and a couple of other members who didn't stay long, including Sam Spoons and the heroically named Vernon Dudley Bohey Noel. Bonzo Dog Band could be viewed as something of a precursor to Monty Python's Flying Circus. They did come up with the Flying Circus members. They were regulars on the TV series Do Not Adjust Your Set with future Monty Python members. And you might think of them as a cross between Monty Python and the Mothers of Invention, except that they were very, very British. Unlike the Mothers. And the first album, Gorilla, starts off with a statement of intent, a spoof of Rule Britannia. It's their Cool Britannia. The Equestrian Statue, the first song by Neil Innes on the album. and that is a psychedelic piece, but prominently featuring the harpsichord. So it's got that antique feel. A lot of psychedelic bands or other pop bands from that era would bring in the harpsichord for that very old time, sort of Edwardian feel. Jollity Farm by the British novelty songwriter Les Saroni. I Left My Heart in San Francisco. That's a parody of a nightclub crooner, which consists of the introduction to the song and never gets to the actual song itself. Calypso parody, Look Out, There's a Monster Coming. Instrumental improvisation, Jazz, Delicious Hot, Disgusting Cold, which is a piece where the various members swapped their customary instruments in order to play the most ramshackle jazz improvisation imaginable. Death Cab for Cutie is their Elvis Presley takeoff. And of course, you probably know that if you've seen the Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour, in which the Bonzos perform that song during the striptease sequence. And the side ends with the brief version of Narcissus. All of these that I'm showing are American versions of the album, which differ in various respects from the original British. This does come with a booklet featuring artwork by the various members, collages and photos and such, as well as the notes and the dedication to Kong, who must have been a great bloke. Side 2 of the album features the intro and the outro. That's the well-known piece based on an uncredited C-Jam blues of Duke Ellington, which starts out introducing each member in turn and continues to introduce more and more fanciful contributors to the song. Mickey's Son and Daughter is the next, and that's a cover of a piece from the 1930s. Mickey Mouse was such a worldwide phenomenon and very popular in Britain. There were a large number of novelty songs, and these included novelty songs about Mickey Mouse. These included The Wedding of Mr. Mickey Mouse, or Mickey Mouse's Wedding Party. Those are two different songs, and so those were followed up by Mickey's Son and Daughter. Music for the Head Ballet, a surrealistic instrumental, and if you look on YouTube, you can find a very bizarre dance performance by the Bonzo Dog band to that piece. Neil Innes's another pop song, Piggy Bank Love. Cynical thing from Viv Stanshall, I'm Bored. And finally, Everything Comes Crashing Down with a cacophonous take on the sound of music. Again, done as a parody of a sleazy nightclub singer, but turning into just the entire kitchen cabinet falling down. So that was Gorilla. The second album in America was Urban Spaceman. The second album in Britain was actually titled The Donut in Granny's Greenhouse, which is a colloquialism for an outhouse. But in America, they added the single I'm the Urban Spaceman to the beginning and titled the album after it. Here's a 45 from Germany of I'm the Urban Spaceman, produced by Apollo C. Vermouth, which is a pseudonym for Paul McCartney. The album is a gatefold this time, and again features a booklet which introduces the various members of the band. So after the very pop-friendly Neil Innes composition, I'm the Urban Spaceman, the album begins in earnest with We Are Normal. We are normal and we want our freedom. which you might recognize also as a line from Love's Forever Changes album. Apparently they both derive from the stage play Marat Sade, which has a longer title that I won't attempt to remember. Postcard is the next track. As with We Are Normal, it's a joint composition by Viv Stanshall and Neil Innes, and it does refer to those naughty seaside postcards, which feature messages such as the one quoted here, "Just married and it sticks out for a mile." Beautiful Zelda, a brief 50s inflected number by Neil Innes. Can Blue Men Sing the Whites is the big blues parody written by Viv Stanshall. Hello Mabel by Neil Innes. And the very brief, another 50s piece, Kama Sutra. Kama Sutra with me. Side 2 begins with Humanoid Boogie, Neil Innes composition that you should look up on YouTube again, because there is a solo performance by Neil Innes from his 70s TV series, The Innes Book of Records, that is one of the weirdest damn things you've ever seen in your life. Trouser Press is the one composition on here that's not by Stanshall and Innes. It's by horn player Roger Ruskenspear. It features the immortal exchange, "Do you like soul music?" No. A couple more collaborative pieces by Stanshall and Innes, My Pink Half of the Drainpipe and Rockalizer Baby. Both in the more surreal vein. This is, in general, sticks pretty much to the psychedelic, surrealistic side of the band. It's a more rock album than the previous one. You don't get that old-time 20s nostalgia feel. Rhinocratic Oaths is a spoken word piece that is something of a foreshadowing of things to come from Viv Stanshall. And finally, 11 Mustachioed Daughters, very dark, voodoo-istic piece of music. Very eerie music and vocals to close out the album. On the third album, Tadpoles, the band went back to a lot of non-original material, going back to the 20s and 30s for a lot of novelty pieces. This again is a US copy. It does have the die-cut cover with the inner sleeve that shows through. Remaining members on the back. Viv Stanshall, Neil Innes, Legs Larry Smith, Dennis Cowan, Roger Ruskenspear, and Rodney Slater. And begins with one of those vaudevillian music hall numbers, Hunting Tigers Out in India. These are mostly songs that the band performed on the Do Not Adjust Your Set TV show. So it is, for that reason, a lot of it is a throwback to their earlier period, which is why it goes more towards the guerrilla than from the rock side that they were developing on Urban Spaceman. Roger Ruskenspear contributes Shirt, which interviews people on the street and turns into 50s sort of Elvis parody again. Tubas in the Moonlight, also a Roger Ruskenspear composition. Dr. Jazz, an old-timey number. A cover of Monster Mash, the old Bobby Boris Pickett hit. And finally, Ready Mades, something more in the slightly surrealistic, but more Neil Innes-influenced pop vein. A little bit dark, but just a nice song with peculiar lyrics. Back to the old vaudevillian music hall pot for Ali Baba's Camel and Laughing Blues and By a Waterfall. And finally, two originals, Mr. Apollo, the bodybuilder song, with no unpleasant bending. Released as a single, with Ready-Mades, mentioned earlier, as the B-side on this. This is a Dutch 45. And the album closes with Canyons of Your Mind, which had been previously released. That was on the B-side of Urban Spaceman. And the single version actually announces that it is a B-side, which is removed from the LP version. Fourth album, Kingship. No booklet this time, but a gatefold cover with lyrics and extensive surrealistic notes from Viv Stanshall. Even more descriptions of the songs on the back cover. This starts off with a raucous rock number by Neil Innes, You Done My Brain In. And that's followed by another Innes comp. Well, Innes wrote the first three. The title track, Kingship, and the very soft, Beatlesque ballad, Quiet Talks and Summer Walks. Viv Stanshall comes blaring in with Tent, his lunatic hard rock piece. Back to the 50s for We Were Wrong. Maybe a little earlier, maybe that's 40s, I think it's 50s. Neil Innes' tribute to the Joke Shop Man, The Bride Stripped Bare by Bachelors, which is a sort of history of the band, and Look at Me, I'm Wonderful, a brief crooner parody. Side 2 begins with Neil Innes' composition, What Do You Do? Again, a little Beatles influence there. You can tell that Neil Innes is the guy who's going to go on to write the music for the Ruddles. A song for Mr. Slater's Parrot, presumably an ornithological friend of Rodney Slater. And Viv Stanshall informs us that we hope to hear him swear, we love to hear him squeak, we like to see him biting fingers in his horny beak. A satirical song, Sport, about how sport turns out a masculine sort. More Beatley pop from Neil Innes, I Want to Be With You. A strange theremin piece. They had a prop theremin made to look like a leg and produced on the album, Noises for the Leg. And finally, the grand rockist finale, Busted, by Stanshall and Innes, complete with dialogue from a policeman who apprehended the singer. So that was the last of the original run of the Bonzo Dog Band albums. I did forget to mention that they changed the name from Bonzo Dog Doodah Band on the first album to Bonzo Dog Band without the doodah, starting on the Donut in Granny's Greenhouse or Urban Spaceman. However, they had to do a fifth album. This is very much a contractual obligation album that came out a couple of years after the others in 1972. And this is actually a Bonzo card glued onto the cover. Let's make up and be friendly. Not really the full complement of Bonzos. Roger Ruskin Spear, I think, is only on one track, which he wrote. Rodney Slater is not present at all. Legs Larry Smith is only on a couple pieces, one of which is a collaboration with Tony Kaye, the original keyboard player from Yes. So, other than that, it's basically Viv Stanshall and Neil Innes with session musicians. Dennis Cowan is still present. And it is definitely a drop in quality from the main four albums. Kicks off with a track called The Strain, which is self-proclaimed scatological rock and roll. A little gross-out body humor from Neil Innes on King of Scurf. And probably otherwise the most notable thing on here is a 9.5-minute monologue by Viv Stanshall, Rawlinson End. Stanshall would go on to produce radio and television about Sir Henry Rawlinson. I should say radio, television, and records. All about the stories of the Rawlinson family at Rawlinson End. So that was it for the main Bonzos sequence. Vivian Stanshall died in a fire in 1995. There have been some reunions. Before he died, there was a single produced, No Matter Who You Vote For, the government always gets in. Not particularly good. And afterwards, in the 2000s, there was a full album created, Pour l'amour des chiens, for the love of the dogs, with Neil Innes, Roger Ruskin Spear, Rodney Slater, Legs Larry Smith, and from the early lineups, Vernon Dudley, Bohé Nolan, Sam Spoons, and Bob Kerr. All the originals, except Viv Stanshall, and without Viv Stanshall, it just isn't the Bonzos. This was the deluxe version. I don't think this ever came out on vinyl, but this boxed version came with a bonus DVD of the reunited band doing some of the classic material. I can't even remember this very well. I think I only ever listened to it at the time. It was pretty good, rather a lot of songs on it. But as I say, it just wasn't the real thing. It couldn't be. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Dada for now.